Hola, and welcome to another grammar lesson with teacher Catalina. Today, we are conjugating AR verbs. And that is super cool because by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to talk about the things you do and the things that everybody does. Before we go to the classroom, don't forget to click like and subscribe. Done? Okay, vamos! So we are ready to get our conjugation on, and today's focus is on conjugating AR verbs. What are AR verbs? AR verbs are simply verbs that end in AR. Remember during our last lesson we talked about infinitives? And we said that infinitives end in AR, ER, and IR? Remember? Well, today we are focusing on conjugating only those infinitives that end in AR and are regular AR verbs. So I have to give you a quick disclaimer here, so make sure that you pay attention to this. Not all verbs that end in AR are going to follow the same set of rules. Remember the verb gustar that we learned in our previous lesson? Gustar is special. It does not follow the same rules as regular AR verbs. So it is very important that if you want to conjugate the verb gustar, you follow the rules that we learned before. And if you missed the lesson, go look in the description so you can watch that. Today, we are focusing on regular AR verbs. Look at this list of regular AR verbs that I have provided for you. Some of those verbs you may be learning how to use in your Spanish class, or if you're learning Spanish, they will be very useful to you. Please keep in mind that you want to make sure you know what they mean so you can use them correctly. We will learn how to conjugate some of those verbs together during our Spanish lesson class. Since we're conjugating AR verbs today, I have the verb estudiar, to study. Do you see how it ends in AR? That's what we call an AR verb. In order for us to conjugate it, basically we're going to change it to match the person that is performing the action. We need to know the two parts of the verb. All verbs have two parts. And in this case, the AR is what we call the ending. Whatever's left over, that's the stem. Okay? So the AR is the ending, and whatever's left over, it's the stem. It is extremely important that you remember them by those names, the ending and the stem, because it's going to be really useful to you. So one more time, the AR is the ending, whatever's left over, it's the stem. Here is another verb, the verb hablar. Remember that the H is silent, hablar, to speak. Again, AR is the ending, whatever's left over, it's the stem. To learn how to conjugate a verb, we have to follow two rules. Take a look. The rules go as follows. Number one, we have to get rid of the ending. In this case, we're going to get rid of the AR. Poof, it's gone. And then, rule number two, we're going to add a new ending. And that's how you conjugate a verb. I want to go ahead and show you how to apply those rules. Do you remember the verb estudiar, to study? Well, let's go ahead and apply the rules together, shall we? I have tijeras, scissors. So rule number one says, literally get rid of the AR. So I'm going to poof, get rid of the AR. It's gone. Look at that. We have the stem of the verb estudiar because we got rid of the AR, the ending. So rule number two says we have to add a new ending. How do I know which endings to add? I don't know. Don't worry, I'm going to show you. But for the sake of this example, I want to show you how this goes. The ending for yo, I, is an O. So this is how we would do if we were conjugating estudiar in the yo form. Suddenly, it went from estudiar to estudio. I study. And that is how you conjugate verbs. You get rid of the AR and you add a new ending, depending on the person that is performing the action. Remember how rule number 2 says that we have to add new endings? Well, they are based off of the subject pronouns. And remember that in a previous lesson, I told you that it was important that you memorize the subject pronouns in this specific order. This is why. If by now you know the subject pronouns in the correct order, all you have to do is memorize the endings that we're about to learn. So, shall we go over the endings? Let's do it! Remember our example about the verb estudiar? And remember how we got rid of the AR and we added an O? That is because the ending for yo is an O. So, estudio means I study. So let's look at the ending for tú. That would be as. El, ella, and usted is a. Nosotros and nosotras amos. Vosotros and vosotras ais. And ellos, ellas, and ustedes would be an. So this right here are the endings that we've been talking about to replace AR. So again, the rules go. Number 1, we get rid of the AR. And number 2, we add new endings. And here are your endings. So if you know your subject pronouns, all you would have to memorize would be o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. And you would know exactly what subject pronoun they would correspond to. So how do I know which ending to add? Well, it's simple. Who is performing the action? Who is studying in this specific case? If it's yo, then it will be estudio. If it's tú, it will be estudias. If it's él, ella, or usted, estudia. If it's nosotros, estudiamos, so on and so forth. So remember, this depends on who is performing the action. That is the appropriate ending that you have to pick to add to your stem after you got rid of that AR. So let's review the rules of conjugating AR verbs one more time. Number 1, poof, get rid of the AR. Number 2, add a new ending. So remember our verb estudiar, or whatever's left of it since we only have the stem. And we said we would add O to make it yo estudio, I study. And that is the same O that we have here. So let's now see if we can conjugate estudiar in all of its forms. Should we? Let's see. So let's start again with estudio. Yo estudio. I study. But now, if we want to say you study, we would say tú estudias. See how the ending changed? Because now it's you performing the action. Good. Él, ella, and usted estudia. He, she, or you formal studies. Nosotros estudiamos, or nosotras estudiamos. Remember, verbs don't have gender, so don't change that. It's still estudiamos whether we talk about nosotros or nosotras. If we're in Spain, we would say you guys, vosotros or vosotras, estudiáis. And finally, ellos, ellas, and ustedes would be estudian. And now you have conjugated the verb estudiar in every single one of its forms. So let's do this with another verb so you can see it works exactly the same. Remember the verb hablar, to speak? Good! The rules say, number 1, we gotta get rid of the AR. So let me get my tijeras and let's get rid of the AR. Ready? It's gone. Bye-bye. Adios, AR. Now, we have to add new endings. So now, let's conjugate the stem of the verb hablar, to speak. We already got rid of the AR, and now we have to add new endings, depending on who's speaking, who's performing the action. So let's do it together. If I want to say I speak, I would say yo hablo. Yo hablo mucho. You speak. Tú hablas. Tú hablas. Él, ella, and usted habla. Él habla. Ella habla. Usted habla. nosotros and nosotras, remember, the gender of the verb doesn't change, would be nosotros hablamos. In Spain, vosotros and vosotras habláis. And finally, ellos, ellas, and ustedes hablan. And once again, you've conjugated a second regular AR verb perfectly. You got rid of the AR and you added a new ending. It's that simple. So now that you know how to conjugate AR verbs, you can put a few sentences together. Remember, all you need is your subject or your subject pronoun and then the correct conjugation of the AR verb. So let's do this together. If I want to say we study a lot, all I'm going to say is nosotros estudiamos mucho. Nosotros estudiamos mucho. And there you have a complete sentence. Now, let's look at a different verb, the verb hablar. We said earlier, yo hablo mucho. That is again a complete sentence. Yo hablo mucho. Now, I want you to think of the following. What if I ask you a question? Got it? So if I'm asking you, who would you be answering about? You're right, you're answering about yourself. So I may ask, ¿hablas tú mucho? Or ¿tú hablas mucho? So who would you be answering about? We talked about it a few seconds ago. You would be answering about yourself. So even though I asked the question in the tú form, you will be answering in the yo form. So you would say, yo hablo mucho. The same thing applies if I ask you a question about ustedes, you guys. Think about it. Hey, do you guys study a lot? Who would you answer about? That's right, you would say, yes, we study a lot. So again, I may say, ¿estudian ustedes mucho? Or ¿ustedes estudian mucho? And you would answer, sí, nosotros estudiamos mucho. Sí, nosotros estudiamos mucho. Remember when we learned the verb gustar, we also learned to say the things that we don't like? Well, it will be very useful if you learn how to say that maybe you don't do those things. Maybe you don't speak a lot. Or maybe you don't study a lot. So where would you put the no? It's the same rule. The no is going to go right here in front of your verb. So let's take a look at that. For example, I may say, ¿tú hablas mucho? ¿Tú hablas mucho? And you want to say no. You would say no for no, and then put another no. So you would say no, no hablo mucho. So the no always goes in front of your verb. That's to make this negative. You are not doing that. You don't do that. So that is exactly where the no goes. Always in front of the verb. So now you are an expert and you know how to conjugate AR verbs. So remember, the rules are, number 1, get rid of the AR. Poof, gone, adios. And number 2, you add a new ending. And that's how you conjugate an AR verb. Fantastic job, you guys. You are now expert conjugators of AR verbs. And that sounds like a really fancy thing, but all you learned how to do was literally take your AR verb, get rid of the AR, and add a new ending. And you did it. You did fantastic. So we have only conjugated the verb gustar and AR verbs, but we have a ton more verbs to conjugate together. So make sure that you hit like and subscribe so we can continue on our conjugation journey. Don't forget that there's new lessons every Thursday and Saturday, and you can always catch up on Cafecito episodes. I am super feliz that you're here today, and I will see you next time. Adios!